Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Jonas Roach, and I am the news editor here at the Architects newspaper. I'd like to welcome you all to the Specs to Site Essentials of Construction Administration live webinar, a CE Strong webinar series powered by the Architects newspaper. This webinar is sponsored by Dell Tech. This program is registered with the AIA CES for continuing professional education. Questions related to specific materials, methods, and services will be addressed at the conclusion of this presentation. This webinar is recorded and can be easily replayed when re-registered on the same webinar registration page. Please allow 7 business days to process certificate of participation and AIA credit reporting for this presentation. Encourage you to ask questions. I'd like to introduce you to today's presenter, Scott Taylor. Scott is a senior specification writer with Dell Tech, where he focuses on researching and updating AIA master spec within Dell Tech Spec Point. He is part of a team responsible for maintaining and enhancing this comprehensive database of specifications, ensuring it remains up to date with evolving building codes, industry standards, and product innovations. Through his work on AIA master spec, Scott helps A&E firms streamline documentation, reduce inconsistencies, and improve specification quality. With over 30 years of industry experience across residential, commercial, healthcare, education, and institutional projects, Scott excels in design development, construction documentation, and material research. He is affiliated with the National Organization of Minority Architects, the American Institute of Architects, the Construction Specifications Institute, and the specifications consultants in independent practice. Remember to please leave your questions for the speaker in the Q&A window. Without further ado, Scott Taylor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, and thank you, the Architects newspaper, for hosting. Hopefully in this webinar, no matter your involvement with construction administration, or as I like to call CA people, you will discover some tips and reminders to apply and share with your project teams at home. Some of our learning objectives today deals with us talking about understanding construction administration's strategic role in safeguarding the design integrity and project vision throughout the build process. Apply business practices for communication, coordination, and documentation with contractors, consultants, and stakeholders to ensure smooth project execution. Understand how to mitigate submittal errors effectively to avoid down-the-road discrepancies and RFIs. Navigate change orders with confidence using proactive problem-solving and documentation strategies to maintain control and clarity. So these are the things that we will be discussing in this webinar. In my career, I have spent time as a construction administrator in the office and in the field. Construction administration is the critical bridge between design vision and the built reality and on-site problem solving. A construction administrator or CA person is central to delivering a successful project, serving as that bridge between design and construction. Well, really, what can a construction administrator bring to the table? Well, what they can bring to the table is experience in building trades, understand how a building goes together, the experience of reading drawings and specs, some field knowledge to help prevent repeated issues, understanding quality control measures, and also able to solve problems and also manage field disputes and miscommunication that could happen in the field. The efforts of a CA person can help enhance the documents that contractors can confidently bid, and most of all, facilitate the project seamlessly during project closeout. You know, the role of a construction administrator can really impact many things. But what are some of those things that the construction administrator can impact? Well, the construction administrator could have a great impact for the good of the project. And here in front of you are 4 areas where a construction administrator can impact a project. And these are some common things that could happen on a project. Errors and omissions. The construction administration is like that second level of quality insurance. Checking drawings and specifications for completeness, clarity, and coordination. This reduces unknowns, conflicts, and omissions that could lead to costly errors during construction. So, yes, a construction administrator can help prevent and also prevent issues that come up before the drawings hit the street and after the project is in construction. What about bids? The quality of bids. It helps. A construction administrator can help with the quality of bids because a well coordinated, and I'm going to say this, the best as possible documents we can put together, error free documents we can put together, well, that would enable a contractor to submit more accurate and competitive bids and less likely to throw costs for unknowns. Some contractors, when the information is not coordinated and they see more information on the documents that even don't fit the project or less information, contractors a lot of times just say, well, you know what, I'm trying to figure it out now. We're just going to throw some money and hopefully we got everything covered. And if they don't have everything covered, they'll change order you to death later. So having a construction administrator can help with that issue, bringing clarity and completeness to bid documents, responding to RFIs during bidding, and as well as addendum management. What about the construction schedule? The work of a CA can bring comprehensive overview of the project, understanding the overview of the project, and can help plan and schedule resources efficiently, identifying and addressing potential bottlenecks early with submittals and RFI management. Can streamline communication, and when it comes to the project schedule, making sure submittals get out on time. And even if the contractor has early packages that they want to go for, then the CA person can help facilitate that. But what about profits? We all are in it to make money for sure. Other than our love for the work, we know that profits are important because that affects the firm and it affects the owner and it affects sometime what we may get at the end of the year, a bonus. So a construction administrator's impact could help effectively control cost by reducing rework, especially if things could be caught before the drawings hit the street for bidding. Also can help with the change orders and any delays that may find its way into the project, and that those type of things that certainly erode profit margins. But clear documentation and proactive management contribute to staying within a project. So we can see here that the impact of the construction administrator can work wonders for project success, the systematic oversight, which is essential for delivering projects that meet or exceed a owner's expectation, while at the same time safeguarding the design, safeguarding um, the interest of all stakeholders. So, what are some of the essential tasks of a construction administrator? Well, that's important because um, it all affects the project outcome. But before construction begins, the construction administrator performs critical tasks. And so, therefore, it's important that they meet all the QA, QC requirements for complete documents. So, early communication is important. Now, here are some of the tasks in regard to the construction administrator. But before we talk about this, I want to take a quick step back because it's important that as a project team, there's some things I want to remind you of. A construction administrator must be equipped to take on the construction team and related stakeholders, let alone the highs and lows that come with every project. And they're going to be using the drawings and the specs for that task. So it's important that as they understand the project and working and dealing with the project team, all that's vital to navigate to the finish line. So please include in your schedule for the project time for the construction administrator to review drawings and specs. Because once these drawings and specs are released for construction, the role of the construction administrator, the CA person, they're on the spotlight. So, as a project team, your collaboration and proactive involvement directly influences the quality of the construction administration. How so? Your early commitment to collaborate, to bring clarity and responsiveness is foundational to effective construction administrative construction. Doing your part to provide accurate, coordinated drawings and specs, leveraging technology and maintaining open communication. Architects and engineers enable the construction administrator to oversee a smoother, more successful project delivery. So, in a nutshell, it's what you do in advance during the CDs that can bring pain or make the process seamless for construction administration. Painless, notice I said painless, construction administration starts with you, project team, and the work you do ahead of construction that will certainly help the construction administrative process. Okay, so let's go in and talk about the process or some tasks. First, let's start with the task. We see that there's drawing reviews, there's specification reviews, RFI reviews, submittal reviews, and change order reviews. Well, all these things are very, very important. In regard to the role of the construction administrator, having them early on the project could see that it can fill in project gaps. And these project gaps are very important, and they start at design development. And as they started the design development, they moved to CDs and then bidding and then instruction. These project gaps could be painful. They can, what they say, come to hunt you if not careful. So therefore, it's important that the CA person gets involved with the project very, very early on so that they can help smooth these and plug these project gaps that could come up. Well, what are these project gaps? Well, these project gaps relate to communication, relate to coordination, and relate to document breakdowns. See, the work of a CA person can be that belts and suspenders, so to speak, to plugging in these gaps between drawings and specs from all these different project phases, even through the completion of the project. But what about during construction? Well, during construction, the CA person can enforce and interpret by reviewing construction against the documents. Also, document changes that may come up, review submittals. These things are all important when it comes to the during construction phase, answering questions in regard to RFIs and any other questions that may come up during construction. Well, that's the role of a CA during construction. You know, early coordination among the architects and engineers and contractors and other stakeholders is one of those most effective ways to reduce delays caused by design changes that might even occur during construction. So let's talk about the process of these tasks of the construction administrator. The process. When it comes to drawing review, completeness and constructability is the key. A CA with the second eye, so to speak, to examine the drawings for completeness, verifying that all necessary information is present to communicate the design intent, and that content is easy to navigate. Have you ever looked at a set of drawings where it was hard, when you go to a floor plan and you're looking at a section, maybe a cross view, and you see that section cross view and you go to the number that is referring to, and you go to that page and it's either not there or it's referencing the wrong section. Well, maybe that may not happen so much if we use programs like Revit, but I know in the early days when everyone was on AutoCAD, that was a challenging thing to do to make sure all the sections and details were accurate and that you could find them. Well, that's the role of the CA person to go through the drawings to make sure that the content is easy to find and navigate. So that it may involve looking at the plans, the elevations, the sections and details, and to make sure that all those things are referenced accurately. Then there's a matter of dimensions and all the annotations on the drawing sheets, confirming that all the necessary details and sections are included. You know, making sure that those references and callouts are correct, looking at schedules and legends, making sure that they're comprehensive and coordinated with the drawings as they relate to the specs. Does the drawing words match the spec words? See, these are some things that the CA person would look for as they review the drawings. Not necessarily a deep dive and technical review, but just overall uh, content review to make sure that they understand the project. And when they get on the phone or in the field with the contractor, and the contractor asks them a question, they'll know where to go with the documents. If it's a page of something on the drawings, they know where to go. If it's something in the specs, they know where to go. So that's why this drawing review is important for completeness and constructability. And speaking of constructability checking, those reviews can also help eliminate surprises on site, improve cost uncertainties and support quality objectives. So depending on the level of the CA's knowledge, acting as a double check or second eyes, they can make sure that the sections and details that they work, that when they look at a section, that they can see that the information is clear. Not so much that they have to know to make sure that, I mean, it will be helpful to know that certain things in the section or detail are in the right spot. They would know that. They would know whether something, looking at a section or detail, oh yeah, they can build that. Or that will be hard to build. These are some things that a CA person would be able to point out. Also, with the constructability reviews or other reviews, it may involve some cross-checking for discrepancies across the disciplines. The things that's shown on the architectural drawings, are they coordinated with the structural drawings and the MEP drawings, being mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and any specialty systems that may be involved. There might even be some coordination drawings that's part of the project, where all of the contractors from the different disciplines have to put down on the coordination drawings their different systems to make sure things don't clash, to find out where you might need to put access panels or where access panels can go, where the lighting falls within the HVAC ductwork. See, these are things that a keep saying CE, sorry about that, a CA person would be able to review for completeness and constructability. But what about the specifications? When it comes to the specifications, part one, the CA person could work with the project team. In part one of the specs, it talks about the administrative procedures. Well, the CA person, before the drawings even hit the street, they will work with the project team to establish clear submittal requirements, defining what shop drawings that they want to see, the product data, the samples. These are some things that the contractor will be providing before proceeding with the work and installation. And so therefore it's important that you, project team, not only are you doing this ahead of time before the CA person get deeply involved with the project, or with the CA person during CDs, just to double check and work with the specifier to make sure that all these requirements are indicated in the specifications. Because later on, if they're not coordinated and talked about, then all of a sudden a whole boatload of submittals will come in, and the CA person would say, why do we need a sample of gypsum board? We all know what the gypsum board looks like. Why do we need a sample? Well, it's in the spec that way because someone did not let the specifier know, oh, by the way, all we need is project data. We don't need a sample of type X gypsum board. Now, there might be some projects where a owner or facility may want just these different samples, but in general, those type of samples for a gypsum board is not required. But how would the contractor know that if that wasn't coordinated ahead of time? That was just an example. So during the duration of the project, it's important that the project team work with the CA person and the specifier to coordinate and clarify which submittals are for approval. The submittals are either going to be for approval or reviewed for conformance versus the items that for information only. And it's important that those things are reviewed so that the contractors understand expectations. There might be certain products where you want to make sure you have maintenance stock or attic stock, so to speak. Or there might be different instructions for different products where the owner might want that as part of their closeout information. See, all these things need to be reviewed ahead of time. And that's where you, as the project team, I'm going to say it, need to make sure whether you do it through your CA person while you're doing it, or whether that or the specifier, or that you do it, make sure that it's clear so that when the CA person step in, all that information is all worked out. And so also, and as part of part one of the specs, the product data. Sometimes there's a long list in the specs as a template for product data. Well, the CA person or you, project team, need to scrutinize how much data and content, again, that you want to see, especially the samples. The interiors folks, they want to see samples. Sometime a small sample will do, sometime a large sample will do, maybe even a full-size sample. But those are the kind of things that need to be worked out with your CA person. And if a CA person, because of staffing issues, is going to come on later, make sure you work with your specifier to make sure all that information is clear as water, so that when a CA person comes, they'll know exactly when they see it in the specs that that is the correct information. And so when the contractor sends it and submit it, then they'll know when they look at the spec, check box, that is all correct. Then what about, oh, one more thing about that I just thought about in terms of part one is the warranties. We want to make sure that the appropriate warranty information is documented in the spec. Whether or not in regard to the operation manuals and other closeout documents, we want to make sure that that information is properly documented um, in the specs. So, project team, it's your responsibility to coordinate with the owner to make sure that what they would like at project closeout is indicated in the specs. If you do not do that, then the spec writer will be left to guess on those items. And sometimes their guesses is based on previous projects or projects of a similar nature. So if those things are not coordinated and the project hits construction, and all of a sudden you start seeing all these different submittals and samples, and you're wondering, where's all this stuff coming from? Well, it's in the spec that way, and it got missed. So that's why, project team, please, I implore you to make sure you work with the specifier, and you work with the CA person, or before the CA person gets on the project, that all those things are clarified. Another part of the specs is part two that also should be reviewed by the CA person. When it comes to part two, the construction administrator plays this key role in understanding and upholding and standing up for the project's materials, the project manufacturers that are called out as bases of design. In some projects, you might need a couple other manufacturers indicated. But most of all, the CA person will be in the field fighting for that basis of design. Contractors rely on part two of the specs for that precise product requirements and the manufacturer's options, and as well as performance criteria. The CA coordinates with the specification writer to ensure these elements are carefully aligned with the drawings. And sometimes we don't realize that this level of detail is crucial for accurate bidding, efficient construction, and successful project delivery. So this is where, again, before the drawings go out for bidding, these are things that project team, you need to review with the specifier, your construction administrator or their CA person, so that all those things is clear as water. I like to say clear as water versus clear as mud. I know that's the expression, but we want things to be so clear that nothing is mistranslated. So, and looking at part two, then you have those material quality standards. The CA person doesn't necessarily need to go in a deep dive in terms of the ASTM standards, even though they may know some, just to make sure that all of the specification is referencing the right industry standards. And then the product options. Sometime when you put specifier may say put the basis of design and say or architect approved equal. Well, what is that architect approved equal, especially if other manufacturers are not listed? Well, these are some things that's going to come up during bidding time. Contractor may want to do a substitution. So it's important that between the project team and the CA person and the specifier, that the basis of design information is clearly noted in the specification. So that when that substitution request comes up, you know how to answer the question, or whether you know where to accept a different manufacturer or not. And then there's the performance requirements. Well, that's important as well. The basis of design, and that if a contractor is going to do a substitution, that those performance requirements are indicated in the specification, so that that serves as a gauge as to the other manufacturer that they're trying to um, introduce to take the place of the basis of design. So with the product material selection, being verified, everything fully described, there's clarity, the required standards are there, the certifications that are there, the performance criteria is there, whether it relates to fire rating, energy efficiency, whatever the case, as long as everything is there clarified and indicated in the specification. Now, let's look at an example, a couple examples when it comes to specification coordinating. Cross-referencing, ensuring that specification sections properly reference related sections, that drawing notations match specification terminology. Again, does the drawing words match the spec words? That's important, because we don't want the contractor mistranslating the content that they see from drawings to specs and from specs to drawings. And we, I remember when I was in production of drawings, I had loved to put on the drawings C specs. That way I didn't have to deal with it. I didn't have to uh, create or craft long paragraphs of notes. I just say C specs. I remember those days. Perhaps that's what some of you do now. You say C specs. There's nothing wrong with saying C specs. But as soon as you put those words on a page or in anywhere on the drawing, I implore you to go to the spec writer, make your list of C specs, those notations, go to your spec writer and make sure that they are aware of them so that they can pick those up in the specs. And of you who are doing specifications, I don't have to tell you or remind you about when you say see drawings in the specs, that you make sure that the project architect knows those different locations where you're saying see drawings to make sure that everything is cross-referenced, because I've had my share of in my career of C specs, and I didn't know about it because no one told me, or it was some uh, last minute information put on the drawings that did not reach did not reach me. You know, people think that the drawings and specs are all produced in parallel. That's not the case in reality. The drawings will always be ahead of the specs, and sometimes it's hard for the specs to keep up. So submittal alignment, verifying that required submittals in each section align with the project's critical path and complexity. Complex curtain wall systems might require mock-ups, testing requirements beyond standard submissions. And then we have contractor responsibility clarity, eliminating confusion and responsibility assignments between trades. For example, clearly defining whether the electrical contractor or fire alarm contractor provides and installs specific interface components. Or you may have that case where the spec writer, architectural spec writer, is providing a joint sealant spec. However, civil or MEP may be providing a joint sealant spec. Well, it may come up. Well, which joint sealant spec do we follow? Well, if all those things are coordinated ahead of time, then maybe the spec and for the MEP, whoever's their spec writer, may even change the title of that spec section so that their spec sections are not bumping heads, so to speak. Let's talk about RFIs and change order navigation that the CA person have to work through. You know, we try very hard, again, to have perfect documents, but we know in reality, no set of documents is perfect or ever flawless. So when it comes to RFIs, you know, the pre-construction, when in regard to the specs, we want to confirm that the submittal organization is in the specs, uh, that the product manufacturers are listed in the specs or the drawings. Sometimes architects like the body of the basis of design manufacturers listed on the drawings. And for the drawings to say see drawings, see, that's a case where the specs are saying see drawings. Or if the project team wants all the manufacturer information in the specs, that's where they may say see specs. But really, technically, you don't really need to say see drawings or see specs because the drawings and specs work as one document. And trust me, if the contractor don't see it in the drawings, they're going to look in the specs. If they're looking in the specs and don't see certain information, they're going to look on the drawing. That's because the drawings and specs is one document. So also pre-construction, when it comes to the drawing, again, constructability reviews for completeness, identifying any possible discrepancies and conflicts that could lead to RFIs is important. Again, we may not catch everything, but my goodness, the better coordinating that you can, the less RFIs and less change orders later. During construction, managing RFIs can be a challenge sometimes, but the CA person is going to make sure that they receive them, track them, and make sure that they facilitate clear responses, coordinating with the project team, preventing any communication and documentation bottlenecks. Same thing with change orders, consulting with the key stakeholders to make sure and evaluate all the different information so that that process can work smoothly and everyone is on the same page in terms of any changes that must happen. So when it comes to interpreting drawings and specs, when it comes to construction clarity, a contractor submits an RFI regarding a conflict between the mechanical ductwork and structural beam. The CA coordinates with the design team to develop a solution. See, that's the nice thing about, or that's the thing that a CA person will do. They're not going to try to be a hero and come up with an answer. No, they want to work with the design team to develop the solution. Remember earlier I said it's important that you work with the CA person so that when it comes to working out solutions or trying to solve a problem, you're all on the same page. You both understand the information at hand. And so once the information and answer is developed, then that information can be documented. That with the resolution and any sketches or any narrative for explaining about the clarification. Things are updated, the drawings or specs, to ensure that later on down the line, everything is well documented. And that it did indeed address the field condition. What about product clarity when it comes to interpreting documents and reviewing submittals? Well, for a custom, one example could be a custom curtain wall system. Well, the CA reviews the shop drawings against the design intent, checking dimensions, materials, connections, and sometimes there might be some waterproofing involved. Well, they will definitely coordinate that with the project team to make sure that everything is clear, make sure there's no conflicts, and make sure that everything, the information is there, that everyone is on the same page before a decision needs to be made. So there's going to be issues, and that's just the nature of construction. But wouldn't it be nice that when these issues come up, that you know where to go in the drawings, you know where to go in the specs? That makes you feel good when you can find the information that you're looking for. So those was just a couple examples when it comes to the what the CA person would do in terms of interpreting drawings with the contractor. Because no matter what, no matter again, we're trying to make the flawless drawings and specs. We can't get away from others mistranslation of the documents. So we should expect questions. So again, we all are here to try to strive for perfect documents, but we know the reality that There's no set of drawings or specs that will ever be flawless. However, the construction administration team or person can bring that essential value to a project, but it also comes with a range of challenges, some beneficial, some difficult, some painful, that will test the teamwork and the individual character of a person or individuals. The construction administration is where the rubber meets the road. But how we approach it as individuals and as a united project team makes all the difference in the world for a successful project. At the same time, build stronger professional relationships. So a CA person is very essential to a project going from specs to the site. Do you have a dedicated CA person? Is there someone that you can train? Is there someone who is detail oriented and willing to step up for that role of a CA person? These are some things to think about because the CA person could be very, very important, being that second eyes, second ears, so to speak, to help manage a project effectively from the DD phase all during through to construction through the construction phase. So the things presented today represent some major things the construction administrator, CA professional can add before and during construction, like belts and suspenders, so to speak, to enhance the success of any project. So, having a little difficulty here. So, in summary, driving project success with specs and drawings to site. Prioritize the early integration of constructability reviews with the design phase to identify and resolve potential issues, reducing costly rework and delays during construction. So getting involved early, getting the CA involved early. Proactively implement robust communication protocols across all project stakeholders to mitigate misunderstandings and accelerate decision making. So as the project goes along, make sure that everyone knows who to contact. The project communication protocols is set, and everyone knows who to contact who when it comes to trying to coordinate, trying to handle any misunderstandings of information and content. And if there are those things that come up, then we know what stakeholders are involved with the decision making. Also, in summary, champion the consistent utilization of digital collaboration platforms to streamline document management, enhance data accessibility, and improve real-time coordination among all team members. So really getting the CA person involved early. Sometime I know some companies use a, program like Bluebeam to house the session of the drawings and specs so that everyone, the project team, can go within that platform and make different comments and do some coordination. So all those things are important in terms of communication and coordination and document management. And lastly, establish a continuous feedback loop between design and construction teams to capture lessons learned, fostering a culture of continuous improvement for future project delivery. See, all these things are important when it comes to the role of a CA person, a construction administrator, and working with them uh, from the beginning of the project before the drawings go out for bid so that they understand the project. So when it's time for them, for their role during construction, they are armed with well coordinated drawings and specs, well uh, coordinated data and information that they can find and be able to locate when questions come up or questions arise. And also information that when RFIs come up or a request for information comes up, they know where to navigate within the documents to find that information and secure it. So please, I implore you, because all these things are important when it comes to the horrible things that can happen on a project. We do our homework and we do the best we can for well coordinated drawings and specs way ahead of time. So when it's time for the role of the CA person, everyone's happy. I've had some bad experiences when it comes to that. So, so we'd like to thank you very much for attending today's presentation because the things that was presented again today are just major things for construction administrators, CA professionals that they can add before and during a construction as the belts and suspenders to enhance success for any project. So now we want to open it up for Q&A.
Thanks so much, Scott. I'm going to field some questions from the Q&A section. This first question is from Jim. Can you review the difference between action submittals and informational submittals? And what is the design professional's responsibility for each of these types of submittals? And can you present examples of suggested submittal stamps?
That's a really good question. It's a really, it's a answer, it's a long answer, but let me see if I can shorten it. So when you think of action submittals, these are submittals where they require the design team or project team to review and say basically yay or nay, approved, or that this information uh, is in conformance with the design intent. So you have to review them and mark them up and get them back to the contractor. Those action submittals, they require action on your part. You have to do something with them to move the project forward. Information submittals is basically just information that in the specs it may say we want to see a welding certificate or we want to see a certificate from the installer that they have 5 years more experience. It might be something about a testing uh, uh, certificate or some information. And basically, you don't have to act on those. That information goes in your file. So if anything comes up later, you have that information to pull out as reference. There also may be information that uh, that the owner may want for their records so that, during the project life cycle, if they have to get in touch with a contractor or some issues come up, they have some information submittals that they can refer to help them along the way in the project. So that's the short answer that to that your question. That was a good question.
Thanks, Scott. We have another question from Jennifer. Can you talk more about the benefits of having a dedicated CA versus having project architects and managers do the CA on their own project?
Um, that's a good question as well. So it really doesn't. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter, but if a firm could afford or make allowances to have a dedicated CA person, well, that person is focused. They are focused on that construction administration. Not to say that a project architect or a project manager cannot also obtain that same focus, but remember, a project architect is running, responsible for the drawings and responsible for all the different content information within the project. And so, therefore, they might even be working on another project. They might be working on two other projects. A project manager is managing the project team. They're managing the client. So, in other words, the focus is divided. Not to say that there's nothing wrong with that, but just like, but having that dedicated CA person where their main focus is that project. So, because they're dealing with the contractor, they can focus and communicate directly with that contractor, get information where the contractor is lacking. So, it's basically a matter of focus. And a lot of firms, I worked in a handful of firms where they didn't have a dedicated CA person, but there was a lot of work for the project architect to do. One firm I worked at, it was just too much work for the project architect, let alone the project manager who was managing three or four other projects. That as the spec writer, they got me involved in the sense that I was responsible for keeping up with the submittals while the project architect focused on any other items that may come up. So that's a good question. It just depends on the operation of the firm and what's allowable and what works for them.
Thanks. We have another question for Mark, from Mark. At what design development or construction document phase would you suggest engaging your specification writer? Is there a particular drawing milestone you personally recommend?
I love that one. Thank you. That's a good question. You know, sometime in my career as a specifier, and the firms I've worked in, I said get me involved with SD because getting me involved with SD, I have an idea of the narrative of the project. So I can set the project up. As the project goes from SD to DD, keeping my eye on that project, I'm able to ask questions because from SD to DD, design things change. So as a spec writer, getting me involved early, I can pick up on those things. I'll be able to pick up on those things and also be first in line to know, oh, that design got changed, so we're not doing that anymore. So getting the spec writer involved early. Don't wait to 50% CD. Don't wait to 95% CD or 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks before the project goes out. The more you can get the spec writer involved early, the better for the drawings and specs, and later for the contractor to understand and be able to bid accurately, as well as avoid a whole lot of host of problems that come up during drawings and spec coordination.
Thanks, Scott. So that's about all the time that we have for today. I'm just going to deliver some closing words. Thank you all so much for attending the live webinar, Specs to Site, Essentials of Construction Administration, a CE Strong webinar series powered by the Architects newspaper. This presentation was sponsored by Deltec. This webinar is recorded and can be easily replayed using the same registration link. Please allow 7 business to process certificates and a webinar. We hope to see you.